Patreon Q&A number 119. I want to thank all 119 of my amazing patrons. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to support me the way that you have been. And to everyone else listening, there's going to be spoilers for all of the series I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Joe D asks, my gift to you is to use this question to talk about anything you want. Hey, thank you, Joe D. So I'm going to talk about Goku versus Saitama and why I don't care about it anymore and why I'm not going to make a video about it now. So a couple months ago on another Q&A, I said that I was going to be making a Goku versus Saitama video because at that time, it legitimately did interest me, and it's something that I thought about for a couple years now. And you know, it's an age-old debate, age-old question, you know, Goku versus Saitama, what would happen? But these last couple months, I've changed, I guess, a little bit as a person and just as a creator, and I honestly don't care about this anymore. Like, I was getting ready to do the research and get the video together and all that stuff, and as I was doing, I was just like, man, I have no motivation to do this. This doesn't interest me anymore. I don't care. And that's because it doesn't matter. Like, power scales in manga and anime, it's already convoluted as it is, and then comparing series and other characters to each other gets even more convoluted. And yeah, there's some people who use literal calculations and basing them off of literal feats, and then there's some people that like to compare panel for panel and stuff like that, and then these two ideologies conflict, and then we get bullying on both sides and all that stuff. You'll actually notice there's like surprisingly a lot of bullying in this community of like power scaling and versus debate stuff, which I guess is understandable. But it's like, I kind of just want to move away from that type of content. I mean, I talk about it in my Q&As. Like, people just ask me like, who would win between these two characters? And I just give a rough idea and off the top of my head what would probably happen, and that even already angers people. But it's like, even if I were to make like this real in-depth video on Goku versus Saitama, there is no right answer to it, and there's still going to be people like this.
You should showed me.
But also another thing is that I want to point out is that like mangakas, when they're like drawing things, I highly doubt, I'll say most of them aren't thinking about like calculations and if the feat makes sense in reality or if it just makes sense at all. They're kind of just drawing cool stuff. And there's also series that have different power systems to them that maybe wouldn't make sense in another one. Like, for example, in Dragon Ball Z, after Goku trains with King Kai and fights Vegeta and all that stuff, and he goes into that Capsule Corp ship on his way to Namek, he's barely even able to function under 20 times gravity. And I think it's pretty much unanimous that the Dragon Ball community will consider Goku a planet buster at this point, maybe even a solar system buster. So if we go to One Punch Man, we'll see that when Darkshine joined the Hero Association, he was like squatting 8 plates under 15 times gravity. So does that mean that Darkshine is a planet buster? No, he's not, because he doesn't have the ability to shoot energy from his hands that could blow up things. And like I said, that's just the aspect of Dragon Ball. Toriyama drew his characters to be able to have the ability to do that. Regardless of any other factors, it's just the way that he drew it. They can do that and other characters can't. Just like in One Piece, if somebody eats a Logia fruit, they're unaffected by physical attacks unless you know Haki. So if somebody with like a Logia were able to come over to Dragon Ball Z, in theory they wouldn't die because nobody in Dragon Ball Z has Haki, you know what I mean? And yeah, I know Goku eventually gets to the point of where he can train under 100 gravity and stuff, but even if we want to go further, like Vegeta after the Namek arc and all that stuff, when they're training for like the androids, he's training under 300 gravity and he's like struggling under that. I mean, he is able to do the training, but it's still like taxizing to him. Yamcha, who I'm sure a lot of people say Yamcha can slap and smack and defeat any One Punch Man character or any character outside of Dragon Ball, he can't even exist in 300 times gravity, while we see Tatsumaki literally getting blasted by 300 times gravity, and it doesn't affect her at all. It's actually played off for like a comical moment with how much it's not affecting her. So does that mean that Tatsumaki is a universe buster? No. And also, if we want to even backtrack way before Goku even is in Dragon Ball Z, Master Roshi is able to blow up the moon with a Kamehameha. So does that mean that Master Roshi would just defeat any S-class hero? No, it doesn't. So what I'm saying is that like, it doesn't matter. You can pick and choose and compare whatever you want, use any kind of calculations or comparisons or whatever, but all of this stuff is kind of convoluted, and it ultimately comes down to how one Japanese guy decided to draw something compared to the other Japanese guy. You know what I mean? And also, we don't know how powerful Saitama is. So we can't just say, well, I think Saitama is truly this strong, therefore he would defeat Goku, because I guess that's just not fair, right? We'd have to go off of what we've literally seen Saitama do compared to what Goku has done. And Goku technically has more impressive feats than Saitama, even if they're not translated as well to the page as Saitama's feats are. And also there's a whole thing about like, you know, apparently they do have these solar system and galaxy busting blasts, but like they shoot them at the Earth, or they'll shoot like a rock or something on the planet, and then it'll just leave a crater that we've seen in any other series. But it doesn't destroy the planet, it doesn't destroy the galaxy. Why? Because, oh, key control. Okay, cool, that's fine. So what I'm saying is that I don't really care anymore. If you think Goku is stronger than Saitama, if you think Saitama is stronger than Goku, go for it. If it helps you sleep better at night, or if it makes you feel better that the team you're on is the winning team, go for it, my friend. But to me, I'm just not really interested in this stuff anymore, and honestly, it just draws in more toxicity that I just would rather not have on the channel. I mean, toxicity in this community in general is just inescapable, but I would like to mitigate it as much as I possibly can. So I'm sorry to anyone I disappointed with me not making like a legit video about this stuff, but I just would rather make different content at this point. JC asked, what would happen if Raiden took on Bang? So it's too soon to say for sure what would happen because we don't really have like substantial feats on Raiden. And of course, he does the test of strength with Dark Shine, and we're kind of getting somewhat of a grasp of where he could be strength-wise, maybe. But even then, it's just still not enough to really know what he would do against Bang, considering we haven't really seen him in combat. But considering that Bang pretty much dominated Dark Shine when they did spar, it's possible there might be somewhat of a similar result between Bang and Raiden. Dark Shine, of course, doesn't come from the sumo background that Raiden does, so maybe Raiden being the Yokozuna master translates better against somebody like Bang, possibly. But even then, we don't know what his durability or speed and all of that stuff is like, so we're just gonna have to wait a little bit before we can really make this comparison. But if I was just blind betting on this fight, I would of course put my money on Bang. Chris G asks, do you think Dragon Ball is overrated? The hardcore fans seem a little toxic, and if you say anything negative about the series, their first offense is mentioning how strong Goku is and he can beat any anime character. I reread the manga and watched the anime, and it seems incredibly repetitive. Goku has little character development and the plot seems redundant, always leading up to the next power-up and nothing else. Not trying to start a war in the comments? Well, that's inevitable. And as for your comment about the fan base being negative, I would say that's just common in anime and manga communities in general. Almost every single series has somewhat of a toxic part of it, for sure. It just seems Dragon Ball more so has one because they probably have the largest, if not the largest, community. So as for it being overrated, I would say yes and no. The majority of the Dragon Ball community only really follows Dragon Ball, so to them it is like the greatest anime or the greatest manga ever because they don't really follow other ones, so they don't know what like other series are like. But like those of us who do follow other mangas and animes and stuff like that, we know where Dragon Ball is in the tier of quality. And I'll say that, yeah, it's not as good as other series for sure. I mean, it actually looks kind of bad if you're comparing it to the really good series, in my opinion. But I think being well written or just being an overall good series is not really what Dragon Ball is about or why it is actually even so popular. It was kind of like in the right place at the right time. Like back when it first came out in like the late 80s, early 90s, just talking about Dragon Ball Z, it was kind of cutting edge. Toriyama really broke the mold when he made that series because there wasn't really a lot of things out there that was like it. And that's why it is so well received, because for its time, it was really amazing. And while it didn't really have great writing or a really compelling story or anything like that, Toriyama was just good at making like cool idea. This is like a cool thing, or that would look cool. And also, he was really good at paneling in the manga, like the fights. That's one of his strong points for sure, which even current day, the top mangakas still struggle with that. But Dragon Ball didn't really have to have this well-crafted story because it had mass appeal. Like it being not that well written and easier to understand and follow is why it was so well received and has such a large fan base. It's like pop music or popular sitcoms or TV shows like that. Most people that you personally talk to in our demographic, I guess, will say that, you know, all that stuff sucks and that like it just appeals to the lowest common denominator. And that's kind of what Dragon Ball is. And Again, not hating on it, not saying it's bad or you're in the lowest common denominator if you enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy Dragon Ball. I cover it on this channel. What I'm saying is that it just has a mass appeal to it. It's easy to get into. And also going back to the right place, the right time thing, in America, or just the Western side of things in general, it was broadcasted in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So a lot of us who are like in our 20s now came up with Dragon Ball Z. Like that was probably the first taste of real anime that we actually got at that point. So it's kind of like imprinted in us, and it has that nostalgia factor too. If anything, Dragon Ball being the way that it is made it as successful as it is. But it's even possible that like if it was well written and had way more depth to it, it's possible it wouldn't have been as successful and popular as it is now because it wouldn't have appealed to as many people, you know what I mean? Dino W asks, I want to know if you have any takeaways from your experience of this year. So I'll say that this year has just basically made me reinforce my thoughts on just things in life in general. And it's that nothing is guaranteed. And don't get comfortable. I'm not saying always be in a state of being uncomfortable. That's just nonsense. But I'm just saying try to move outside of your comfort zone as much as you can and try to experience new things. And don't always try to seek pleasure in things, if that makes sense. And your second question, what are your goals for next year? Well, I'm just gonna continue on my path of trying to become the Pirate King. I'm gonna try to cover as many different series as I can on the channel. Definitely going into Jujutsu Kaisen for sure. And I'm gonna be making a big push into One Piece content eventually. So that's really all I'm focused on at the moment. Free-Tshirts asks, what is the purpose of Electric Catfish Man and Mycoplasma's new inclusion into the redraws from chapter 112? So this is a good question. I don't know. Like I talked about in that review, I don't know why they chose to go down that path. I mean, Electric Catfish Man does say something about he can sense like an earthquake or something greater even happening, and that goes into some kind of Asian mythology lore, something like that. I assumed that he was talking about either Saitama versus Orochi, or maybe even Tatsumaki pulling the base out of the ground or something like that. Why did Mycoplasma survive? Why did he survive? Why are they going to escape? I don't know. Are One and Murata like trying to have like a group of monsters that are redeemed or something like that? Maybe that's going to play into a future story arc, like where there's going to be like this coalition of monsters that don't want to be evil and kind of just want to live their lives, kind of like humans almost, maybe. And also, as for him coming to the surface, is that going to interact with Neon? Possibly. Maybe Neon kills them or something, or maybe they help the heroes against Neon and that's more of a redemption for them possibly. Or it just plays into them like setting up Saitama versus Orochi more, or maybe Saitama punching Rover has something to do with it. I think at the minimum, they're just there to, I don't give more exposition or set up future plot points that are going to happen, like just within the next couple chapters. But other than that, they could also be included in like a long-term storytelling aspect, possibly. I'm just confused with them. Justin N asks, I know that Saitama isn't Blast, but is it possible that Blast transferred his powers to Saitama at some point and the cube allows him to do that? So I'll say that it's possible for sure, but it's extremely unlikely that this is the case. So far, there's no evidence to even remotely support that this is a thing, and we actually know for sure how Saitama became as powerful as he did. We saw he removed his limiter through, you know, crazy harsh training. So Blast transferring his power to Saitama just really wouldn't make sense at this point, and also, like I said, there's just nothing to support this. And if this was the case, I wouldn't like that. I think that would kind of be cheating Saitama out of his entire character, and also it would be a little derivative of like other series and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say no, I don't think this is the case at all. But you said, is it possible? And yeah, I'm sure it's possible, but that's just not likely. Legandaryus asks, how was Zoro able to fight with his really bad sense of direction? I think that's just a gaggy, like, personality trait of Zoro, really. It's just something to give levity to Zoro's character every now and then, and just to have callbacks to him. I don't really think it has anything to do with him in a fight, because like once he gets into a fight, he goes into like the fight mode. He's not really navigating or anything, and also he has observation hockey, so that can allow him to go through a fight without getting lost, I suppose. And then your second question, ever thought of doing how someone would survive in One Punch Man World videos? I've actually done that before. Somebody on Patreon requested that I made like Aki Inu and Kaido in the One Punch Man world. You can check it out on the channel. I made it sometime last year. But aside from that, I'm not really personally interested in doing stuff like that. But if it was requested, then I would do it. Little Ferrari asks, if you had to choose, what is your absolute favorite video game? So it's a little difficult to say for sure, but maybe Minecraft or something like that. Minecraft, Fallout 3, Skyrim, games like that. I've really loved and played them so much over my life. But if I had to pick just one, I guess Minecraft. That's such a solid game, you know, it's like basically almost perfect. Mantis Man C asks, was King in the city where the meteor was going to hit? If so, that might be another dragon level feat for King, not just Saitama. So I don't think King was in Z City at that time, because King, it's stated that he lives in M City, like that's where his apartment is. So I mean, it's possible he was randomly in Z City, but I don't think there's any evidence to support that at this point. So this was just more of a feat for Saitama. But I will say for sure, if King was like in the vicinity of the meteor, then Saitama or someone capable of destroying the meteor would come out and save King from it for sure. Mr.Awsome asks, is the organization controlling the media, considering that everyone underestimates the S-Class heroes and the Hero Association? No, I don't think so. I mean, is it possible? Sure. Going back to what I've been saying throughout the Q&A, there's not really any kind of evidence to support this yet. I mean, maybe they're manipulating some kind of satellite and that's going into all of that stuff. But I just think that people underestimating S-Class heroes and just things in general is just a narrative that has been in the series since the beginning. It's just, people are kind of like goofy in this world, and a lot of them are naive or just easily susceptible to just fake news, if you will. Like, everyone thinks they're like the strongest, and everyone thinks that like just because somebody is said to be strong that they're not necessarily strong. And of course, it's not everyone. There's quite a few characters that fall into this, and I don't think it has anything to do with the organization manipulating things. I just think one might be having like some kind of commentary on society in general, how most people are just kind of like stupid. And your second question, who would win in a head-to-head battle between the Tank Top Army and the Church of Otherworldly Reincarnation? So the Church of Otherworldly Reincarnation, it's not stated that they're like fighters or anything as far as I know, but they do have 900,000 members, as where the Tank Top Army doesn't even have like 100, I think. While they all are pro heroes to some extent, you know, ranging through various levels, it's like, could all of them defeat 900,000 people who are probably maybe below Wolf? So it's like 900,000 below Wolves versus one S-Class hero, like one A-Class hero, a couple B and a couple C. Could they win? I don't know. It's hard to say for sure, but man, I guess I'd put my money on the Tank Top Army. Paper Wario asks, how strong do you think Rei Todoroki was? This is a great question. I've always thought about that. It was like, okay, so clearly she passed on that ice manipulation quirk to Shoto. So could she use it to the same extent as him? Probably not, because, you know, you can inherently have a quirk, but it doesn't mean it's already busted off the bat. You know, it's implied that you need to do training in order to get a quirk to a certain level. So it's possible that Rei could just use her quirk to the extent of, like, you see Izuku's mom, like how she has like that telekinesis quirk, but she can only pull objects to her. I'm sure if she trained that, maybe she could pull even bigger things to her. So maybe it's similar with Rei. Maybe she can only create like a little bit of ice or something. But considering that Shoto is like a genetic specimen and he's trained, you know, since he was a kid, he could do the ice quirk to a crazy extent because of that. But I would have liked to see what Rei was capable of, or even just Fuyumi and Natsuo or whatever, but we're probably not gonna see that. Second question, if we ignore Koda's timid nature and place him in an optimal environment, forest, ocean, safari, how strong do you think he could be? And some animals have quirks. Well, it's extremely rare that animals do have quirks in the My Hero world, at least it's stated as such. So for him to have an animal with a quirk would just be unlikely in my opinion. But aside from that, you know, he's just bloodlusted, we'll say, since we're removing his timid nature, or just very angry, very focused. And then he's like in a forest or something. He could be a force. For sure. I mean, like when he was going against Present Mike, he summoned all of those bugs to go over him. Like he could do that just on a greater scale and a small scale. Like he could have the bugs, the birds, any other like vicious apex predators out there. Like he would be a serious threat if he really wanted to be. I think that for sure. Beowolf asks, do you think Demon King Tanjiro could be defeated by the Hashira without the aid of drug intervention? I'm gonna say no. Because like you said, they say in the chapter that he can't be killed by red blades, which is also just going into the Nichiren blades. He can't be killed by sunlight. So there's essentially no way that he can be defeated, at least in the world of Demon Slayer. And, you know, if we're not taking into consideration Tamayo's drugs and all that stuff, then yeah, I guess he truly is unbeatable to some extent, unless you like nuke him or something. But maybe he can even regenerate from that. I don't know. But yeah, it just doesn't seem likely that he can be defeated without drug stuff. He was literally overpowered. And then your second question, if Muzan was able to conquer the sun, would he be able to take on Blast? I don't think so. I think Blast would just vaporize him probably or something like that. Even if he didn't vaporize him, there's no way he can match Blast's perceived level of strength or speed or something like that. I mean, of course, we haven't seen Blast in action, but just the legend of Blast and his known feats, I just think surpass Muzan by a lot, even if he was able to live in the sunlight. Sean H asks, with My Hero ending soon, what series would you pick to fill the shoes on your channel? Suggestions for me would be Black Clover, Kaiju number 8, Mashal. So I think Black Clover's ending as well, right? It's probably gonna be over next year or something. Kaiju number 8, I'm gonna follow that a little more closely because it is gaining some popularity and traction. I'll see where that goes before I decide anything on that. Mashal for sure is going to be in the future of my channel. Just gonna wait a little bit because there's other things I need to take care of before that. And also there's time for Mashal to grow. I'm sure it'll explode once it gets its anime in a year or two. But what will be replacing My Hero or just going on my channel regardless if My Hero ends soon or not is Jujutsu Kaisen 100%. That is the next series I will be covering. So look out for that. Wolfire54 asks, do you think we'll see any more S-Class heroes or even cadres have their own Blast flashback in this arc? Yeah, anything's possible at this point. I wouldn't have guessed that Abai Mask would have known Blast or had a flashback with him. So it's possible that like a whole bunch of other characters maybe have met Blast or something, and that maybe that's one of the narratives going on here. Maybe Blast has somehow interacted with almost all of these characters at some point, and he's, I don't know, somehow to indirectly or directly influence them into becoming who they are currently in the series. I think that would be pretty interesting. How everything kind of ties back to Blast, maybe. Then your second question, how do you think the civilians of the world see Blast? That's a great question because we don't really see them talking about Blast. Blast is hardly really talked about unless it's like from people that are like in the know. And as of right now, it's implied that everyone thinks that King is the strongest, not Blast. So it seems like King is like really the poster boy for stuff like that. Blast is kind of just like maybe even a legend at this point. And like you said, do they even think he's not even real? I mean, maybe that's even some of the case. Maybe people just think that Blast might not even be a real thing. Maybe he's just something that was made up possibly. I mean, they don't say that, but considering that everyone is just on the King hype train and not even worried about Blast, I assume that maybe people don't even really care about Blast because they just think that like King and Tatsumaki are the two top ones, and maybe Blast isn't even as strong as them and he's retired because of that possibly. We'll just need to have more info, but I think the whole King thing really cements that people don't probably care about him that much. But that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Once again, I want to thank all 119 of my incredible patrons. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to support me. Honestly, it means the world to me. And if you would like to be in next week's Q&A, simply check out the Patreon. The $5 tier will give you access to this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.